Ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle said, "It is clearly better that property should be private, but the use of it common, and the special business of the legislator is to create in men this benevolent disposition," meaning we can and we should also be permitted and allowed by our governments and by our politicians to acquire and own our own personal properties that we basically buy and purchase from the governments under legal laws and authentic values in one way or another. So we should definitely be allowed, and we must also be permitted by our rulers as well as by our governments to be in acquisition and achievement and possession of some kind of private land or another, but it must not be infinite or great or so much that it becomes a threat to the other lower classes and working and poor people in the society. Because if we continue to acquire and achieve resources, wealth, property, land, estates with the help of our money, wealth, or on the basis of our influence, power, and our connections with the political apparatus and politicians, then obviously we can also be considered to be unjust, unfair, corrupt, disappointing, untrustworthy, immoral in one way or another. And that's why obviously the property should be private, and it is better according to Aristotle, but the use of it should be common, but not private. Now we can and we should acquire private property. That should be allowed and permitted, but the use of our property should be for everyone and not just for our own evil desires, one-sided interests, partial ends, intentions, etc. Because if we continue to acquire and develop resources, properties, estates, and own many different objects because of our liberty, and because we're also allowed and permitted by the governments to do so because of our influence, then we're only going to misuse it because of our unfairness and unfair attitude, immoral behavior. But the thing is, instead of doing the former, we must be actually willing to use our owned properties and privately acquired lands and rooms for the welfare, justice, and well-being of the needy, poor, and the other lower class people around ourselves in the society. And then only we are humanitarian and great and significant, moral, meaningful, whatever you want to call it. But if we acquire resources